Hello, bird nerds. Oh, let me get rid of that one. Hello, bird nerds. Let's start again. I'm Grant Williams. This is the Bird Emergency. I'm delighted today to welcome again Mick. It's your third time on the show. Once audio only. How are you? Thanks. Great. Welcome.
Yeah, I'm very well, thanks. It's great to be back.
It's a beautiful day to be alive, Mick. Uh, Let me inject a bit of politics. We have a government that seems to give a shit about furry and feathered creatures and plants and stuff. So, sort of a new world. Are you feeling invigorated and really energised about where we find ourselves in this country now?
I have to admit that I am. Yeah, I think is it today the State of the Environment report comes out?
No, that comes out on the 19th of July. Thank you, Mick.
19th.
That gives me a chance to plug 25th of July. We're doing a State of the Environment report live stream with you and Richie and Holly Parsons, and
Mhm.
I'm going to invite a few other people along, and we'll really be talking about what should be done first, what's next, what are the priorities, and well, hopefully we'll see. Hopefully it's not as bad as we expected it might be.
Yes,
But
indeed.
yeah. So while we're on that, Mick, before we introduce Habitat Innovations, or those who have seen your first shows on the Bird Emergency will know of Habitat. But do you think there'll be a renewed bout of activity with your primary client base?
Um, Look, I think so. I think the people that have got some funding at the moment will likely continue to. What needs to happen is that there's more people doing a lot more things if we're going to start reversing the decline of species. So, yeah, there's been a lot that's very targeted to specific species and hoping that they become umbrella species. But I think some of those targets are allowing a lot of the other, perhaps less cute and cuddly animals sort of fall by the wayside a bit.
Well, let's start at the beginning, Mick. When when you first joined the show, this was you, right? And
Yeah.
and since then, um, that box, that formerly Habitat box, has kind of turned into these and these. So, tell us tell us about the beginning of your artificial hollows or artificial nest box journey.
That image is a perfect start point because that was one of the very first, I mean, call it a prototype. I think it was much cruder than that, but that goes right back to some advice I received from Dave Watson at CSU, and he was reluctant to take me on to do a honours research project around nest boxes because he said to me that everyone's kind of tinkered around the edges with timber boxes and made some incremental changes, but no one's really hitting the big issues. So if you're going to do it, go right back to the start and look at the key issues around durability and thermal performance, as well as sort of the ecological design and understanding. That box, I don't know if it looks like it or not. That's actually PVC pipe with a 3D printed entrance on there, all painted up, and it has a timber insert in the middle. And that, I mean, that really was the catalyst for what we're doing now as habitat innovation and management. We went through a lot of iterations, a hell of a lot of iterations to get to where we are now. But that idea of a double wall with a durable outer casing has really evolved from that point to where we are now.
So on this shot, Mick, I think people can get a better understanding of what the boxes are. Now they're injection molded in one piece, and you can, if people have a close look, that you can then slide the timber inserts and their standard size timber that's milled everywhere, that slide into those grooves, and that's what gives you the superior thermal regulation. Correct?
Yeah, that's right. But also, if you can see where those holes are, I'm pointing to my screen, which is going to be useless for anyone. But
there, there's a
if you see
hole
where those
at
holes
each
are, that's
corner.
actually breaking the double wall in the plastic. So there's dual plastic walls in there, and then the timber goes inside. We use 19 mil eco ply, and that provides 3 layers, which is proven to be really important for the thermal stability.
So go over again what the issue is with the typical backyard. You know, granddad built me a nest box thing. Why do so many species not use them? What's the problem?
Look, the backyard ones I think aren't so much an issue, because people that put them up in their backyards, they actually care. They go and look at the birds or the critters using them. They're likely to maintain them and replace them. But the longevity is one of the key issues. So I think it's pretty well documented within literature and even on your show, Grant, that tree hollows take a very long time to form in Australia. I mean, roughly 100 years for a small one, and looking at hundreds of years for large hollows. And timber nest boxes last on average around sort of 8 to 10 years. You'll always find people that have got a great quality nest box that they've built or purchased somewhere that will last longer than that. And then the other end, there's good examples of ones that are poorly constructed and will fall out of trees in a couple of years. So if you've got a timber box in your backyard and you replace that and you've got some rosellas or something using it and they're coming back year on year, that is fantastic. I think where the big issue is for the offsets and those grant-funded projects where they can tend to be a ticker box exercise, and people put up, 100 or 200 nest boxes, and it might be government agencies or groups that get funding, but there's never the funding or incentive for people to be going back and replacing those boxes. So if the majority of those boxes are out of service in 10 years and there's been clearing of large hollow-bearing trees, you haven't really solved much of a problem at all. You've just sort of covered a stopgap solution.
Okay, let's talk about that issue in particular, because I think people who aren't sort of in the game, in the ecology space already, would be surprised about how that situation arises. So we don't need to call anyone out and blame anyone, because people are only trying to do what they can with the funds that they get.
Absolutely.
But is that a common and real significant problem where funding for offsets, and I'm guessing that that's linked to development, to some form of development, be it agricultural development and removing old hollows in standing timber, where that money is being used to put up shit nest boxes and there is no ongoing funding for monitoring, that either means you have empty nest boxes or you have nest boxes that are full of invasive species that like them, and that there's no information being gathered about those boxes in the future. So while everyone says, "Oh, offsets, that's great. The developers have done a good thing, and everyone's happy." And there's 200 nest boxes out there, but that really just means there's 200 nest boxes full of 4,000 starlings, and no trees for superb parrots, for instance.
Yeah, and look, I mean, it could even be a situation where you've got 200 boxes full of rosellas and red rump parrots and other things, but we're continuing to see huge volumes of land clearing in Australia, and there's sort of this idea that, well, we provide that stopgap and they'll move on and find other areas of habitat, even if those boxes have gone in 10 or 15 or 20 years. But that it's just not the case. We're seeing such a shrinking volume of native vegetation in this country, and the clearance of those old trees, that it really becomes a long-term issue. I think any of these sort of artificial hollow solutions need to be planned very much for the long term with a maintenance and replacement and monitoring strategy.
Now, let me kind of backtrack, but I want to lead you in a direction related to what you just told me. Now, that big shiny lump of stainless steel is a die. That's what it's called. And I used to work, I think I told you the story once before. I used to work in a factory that made plastic rulers and then were printed with advertising material. Now, the die that was in that machine produced 4 plastic 30 centimetre rulers at a time. And the owner told me that it cost him $50,000 for the die. Now, that seemed to me far less intricate than the one that you've got here.
Yeah, and that's a 6-ton lump of steel you're looking at for that die or mould.
And it's actually the etching or whatever, which is really, really expensive, isn't it? It's getting the finish on it and whatnot. But where I wanted to lead you was that's a fairly big opening there. Now, how species specific? Like how much can you target what is likely to use the particular model of box? Obviously, a cockatoo is going to need a different size one than a red rump parrot, and
yes,
a pardalote is going to need a smaller one. And then if we have a look at these, this one, which you sent me this image, that's a feather-tailed glider. Now, are you able to exclude, like in an area where you're targeting particular species or looking to provide a suitable habitat, including nesting opportunities, are you able to really tailor a box to a species? Like, has the science got that far?
Yeah, so it's a completely modular system. So all the plastic components screw together, or they're snap-in fittings. We've got a long branch stub entrance and a short branch stub entrance. So that's the longer one that you see there. And from the previous image, you could also see there was the top entrance, which we can do. All of the entrances, other than that, we have a larger top entrance, but the side entrance, the maximum dimension is 90 mil. But you can see there, we can actually restrict the entrance because all of our timber inserts are CNC machined. And so we cut custom size holes, or we do vertical cracks, or we can do ellipses. It all depends on the species we're targeting. And we can also include what we're calling internal baffles and really reduce the volume inside the boxes. So for things like a pardalote, it's a very narrow, long chamber that we create. And then obviously for your larger species, we just drop those timbers in around the inside for the full cavity.
So the image I've got on the screen now shows the modular nature of the design. That's what, 4 units put
It
together.
is, yeah.
And so that might be what's necessary, for instance, for a pardalote, but within that you can create a tunnel pretty much, and then maybe the chamber will just be in the last segment. Is that how that would work?
That, yes, we do that for some species. That particular one you've got on the screen there, people might be shocked if they're used to seeing timber bat boxes, but that's our yellow belly sheath tail bat box, and that sort of goes back to the point where we really base all of our targeted species configurations off our scientific literature, and that includes the height of installation and the angle. So you can see that one's sort of almost horizontal in the tree. It's a huge box for a small bat, but that's the type of hollows they use. They like a spout hollow. And in those ones, we actually can restrict those as well to have much smaller internal dimensions than what you saw in that box coming off the line.
So your Indian miner might not be able to get access to it.
Yeah, well, that one, if an Indian miner got in there, it's a 90mm entrance on that one, so it would probably be open slather. Okay. For things like red rump parrots, we've started putting internal baffles in there where we put a bottom entrance on a 2-unit box. And so the birds actually have to come in at the bottom, climb over a timber baffle that is CNC machined to have a ladder up it, and then over into the nesting chamber so that we can reduce those sort of the miners and the starlings.
Because they don't like climbing the
No, they're not set up for it.
Okay. Now, just while we're chatting, I'll just scroll through a couple more of these. Now, this is a greater glider having a look, deciding whether they would like to move in. I love that you've got the feathertail glider. Where was that one, Mick?
That one's actually at Burrendong Arboretum, and it's you can see that's a pretty large box. It certainly wasn't put up to target feathertail gliders. So next time we're out there, we'll be putting up a very small box that's to target those guys in that tree, because he was a repeat visitor, that little guy.
But that tells us a story, doesn't it, about where we're at out there in the environment, that they can't find alternatives.
Yeah, I mean, you put up these boxes and it's amazing the number of animals that come and are checking them out. They can recognise it for something different and potential habitat, and they'll come and have a look. And both those cases, the greater glider box, or the greater glider on that box, that one was set up for rosellas, so it wouldn't have had a chance of squeezing into there. But great data for us to see that these greater gliders out on that site. We did a bit of work out there for a land care group, and now we know where the greater gliders are. They can look down the track to be putting in some habitat for them as well.
Okay, so a couple of questions out of the discussion so far. In general, who are your clients?
A little bit different, because we do ecological consulting, and then we also have the Habitat nest boxes. But for the nest boxes, we've done a lot of sort of private people buying them online, and then we do a lot of bigger stuff for land care groups, Transport New South Wales, your state government agencies. It's been pretty mixed and varied. We're working with Zoos Victoria and Park Victoria at the moment for leadbeater's possum boxes. We've done some boxes for South Australia for Western pygmies, and yeah, very mixed and varied, but often those bigger orders are coming through state government agencies.
Now, I know there's commercial in confidence stuff and whatnot, but the first time we spoke, Mick, and you were just moving to commercialising. You'd sort of settled on a design, you were happy that it worked, and you'd moved from sort of testing and you were about to get into full-scale production. How many units have you pumped out now?
Oh, good question. I think we must have done 1,000 by now, I think. 1,000 boxes. So, yeah, we've pretty much got through our whole first production run and we've done a second one. So it's been more volume than we anticipated. We thought that first production run might get us through 12 months and it was gone after about 6.
I'm guessing that you are like contracting with a specialist moulder who you haven't had to go and set up your own factory or anything like that. You've just you've invested in the die, and
Yes.
then you contract to get certain units produced. So you've got the one box body,
Yes.
and then you produce all the different accessories. So you've got a stock of skinny spouts, wide spouts, and all the inserts that you need.
Brackets and blanks and lids and and then we've also got all the timbers for different configurations and different target species.
Yeah, fabulous. So, 1,000 doesn't sound like a lot, but if we settled on 70 years to produce a hollow, that's 70,000 years.
Yes.
Of natural processes, and you're still sort of right at the beginning of the journey. Now you've produced 1,000. How many are hanging in trees at the moment?
Look, I reckon we've installed probably 20 to 30% of those.
Okay.
So I could guarantee that those ones are up in trees. I think we've had a lot of feedback from the people that have bought them online that are sending us photos and videos of animals using them, and so we can guarantee those ones are up. I guess we can only assume with the others that the people that have bought them haven't bought them just to sit in a shed.
Yep. Mick, animals using them. Oops.
Yeah, so this one was a lovely guy, Michael Reed, his name is. He bought a couple of boxes online from us. He put that box up on a Sunday, I believe, and had some footage on the Tuesday or Wednesday of gliders going in. And then that was within a week they were building the den in there.
And it's very popular, isn't it? It's
very popular.
Now, with about 20 or 30% out there, so we're saying between 200 and 300 hanging up there in trees, you're probably not getting feedback on everyone that's out there. But can you have a stab at how many are being occupied with desirable species? Let's put it that way.
Look, it's really the mammals at this point because we've only been going pretty much since January, so we missed the key bird breeding season from last year, but we're getting a lot of feedback with the gliders and those sorts of critters using them. It'll be a big spring for us. I think we'll be out doing a lot of monitoring this spring and seeing that the birds are coming in and we're getting those target species that we're looking for. That'll be the big one.
So that means that when you sent me this picture and we first talked, does that make me an early adopter?
Yeah, very much it does. And I think there was some good media around that out of Charles Sturt Uni because a lot of people still come to me now and say, "Are your 3D boxes, are they available?" And like, well, yes, but they're no longer 3D printed.
Um, it's been a pretty popular episode of the show, Mick, and same as when we did the live stream with Holly. So there's obviously a real desire amongst the average folk, apart from team ecology and team local government and whatnot, to get their hands on them. Do you have to sort of prioritize where they're going? Like, is it a long pipeline for someone to sort of contact you, and you have to work through a a project, for want of a better term, so that they're not getting used in the way that so many of the the backyard of bird boxes get used? Because monitoring is a key part of the effective management of
Yes,
artificial hollows, isn't it?
yes, absolutely. We we have some general configurations online. So through our web sales, we just sort of have a list there of 2 unit box, 3 unit box, and some common target species, and say, if there's something else you're looking for, come to us, because it would be a ridiculously difficult website to navigate if we listed every configuration that we can do. And we've found that most of the sort of people wanting to put one up and buy 1 or 2 for the backyard are looking for some of those pretty commonly targeted species like rosellas and gliders and possums and that sort of thing. So that's pretty easy. When we have bigger orders come in, we definitely spend a lot more time on that, and we put a proposal together, and often we'll exclude species that they've given us and just say, look, we could sell you something, but it's not going to be successful for X, Y, or Z reason. So we're not going
Just
to do that.
before you move on, what kind of species would you exclude? Or actually, probably the question is, what are the species that people think they should be looking after that they're wasting their time, or it's actually not beneficial to go down that road?
I think the best example was a group that came to us, who I won't mention, but they were looking for nest boxes for paradise parrots, and even had dimensions for the nest boxes they were after. So I thought that was quite ambitious.
Um, I'm speechless, just because I love the optimism, but
Yes.
but I mean, is there a rational group out there that actually believe that there are paradise parrots looking for ant mound substitutes? Are there actually some people
I think someone had done a pretty quick and nasty database search of species for an area and come back with results, and didn't have the knowledge or the time to assess what had come back, because there were a few shockers in that one.
um, Mick, you could have taken 150 grand off him. Oh my goodness!
Look, I'm no expert on the paradise parrot, but I'm pretty sure that there weren't any records of them using tree hollows anyway. They were termite mound nesters, so I don't think even if there were some out there, that a nest box would help.
Look, I I don't hold out much hope that we're going to get a night parrot story that you could substitute night parrot for paradise parrot.
No.
I wish, but I tell you what, I reckon there might be a couple of people who wouldn't mind some hooded parrot or golden shouldered parrot alternatives to be something that would work. But have you got any records of either of those that would take to a
I've seen some of the stuff that zoos have done for those species, and sort of creating artificial termite mounds with a nest box inside and heated and all that sort of stuff. But I think that'd be one, if someone came to us, definitely I'd say, no, I think you're probably barking up the wrong tree.
But they do. I mean, there are successful breeders of golden-shouldered and hooded parrots, so they must be. They're certainly adaptable in captivity. Whether or not that adaptability carries into a free range setting.
Yeah, look, there's a lot of holes in the literature around hollow dimensions and things for a lot of the Australian hollow using species. So I cautiously look at what works in aviculture and sort of take it, as I say, very cautiously, because I think a lot of what can happen with captive birds doesn't necessarily translate back to wild birds.
Back to the wild,
but
yeah.
It can give you some good pointers as to dimensions and that sort of thing. But I certainly wouldn't aim to replicate something that's been used for decades in an aviary situation and think that will necessarily work in the wild.
With Costa. Hello, Costa. Thanks. Can I put that up? No, I can't display that, Costa. But you can make a comment, and I'd like to put that up. It's interesting that Costa's watching along at the moment, because the point of asking about what people want is that there must be a big overlay between mad keen gardeners and people who are investing a lot of time and money into their private properties. But that's not really your focus at the moment, is it? I mean, you're not a retail brand yet, are you?
Oh, we do sell our boxes online through our website. We don't distribute them through retailers at all. It was a very conscious decision that we made right from the start, that if someone wants one of our boxes to put up in their backyard, they will pay exactly the same price as if you come to me from a government agency and you want 50 of those boxes.
The point that I wanted to sort of push with that sort of leading question, Mick, is that monitoring and feeding back data to you is as important as just getting some out there in the environment, isn't it? Because you're still developing, you're still improving, and as we made the point earlier on, with so little money available for the environmental works, is that a good general term to use, Mick? That you don't want to waste any of it, do you?
No, and that's exactly right. It is something that we would do at least once a week. Is say to people, we could put together a box for X, Y, and Z species, but we really don't think you'll get any success with it, either because of the ecological requirements of that species or because of your location, or if you're planning to put it up on a ladder, you're not going to get anywhere near high enough for that target species, all that sort of stuff. So we want to see our product work. We're being driven to do this because we actually care deeply about this stuff. We don't want to see our boxes just put out in the field and in inappropriate locations or inappropriate configurations where they're just not going to have any chance of success.
Now, if you're watching at the moment, and Mick, that's a ladder up on the screen there, isn't it?
Yeah, that's my ladder.
Which is 3 ropes, a power drill, and a chainsaw. Oh, and what have I got up there? Is that a winch, a hand winch, or something up there too?
No, it's a
No?
kind of combo hammer
Oh,
wrecking
multi
bar.
tool.
Yeah.
Cool, cool. So that's another part of the story, isn't it? That it's one thing to have the nest box or the hollow, but if you don't put it in the right place, it's going to be a sad and lonely. It's going to be a nerd at the cool people's dance, right?
Yes. Yeah, and it really is a critical part of it that people get wrong routinely. So you can do a desktop search and know you've got your target species in the area, but even understanding the ecological requirements, the feed trees, that sort of thing of your target species is pretty important as to where you're locating nest boxes. And the heights can be really important too. There's a lot of species that really like canopy stuff, and there's quite a few that like boxes quite low to the ground as well. So understanding that and understanding the different contexts which you're working in. We've done installations down on the south coast in those really tall spotted gum forests where your first branch isn't for 10 metres. And so if you're putting up a glider box down there, you really want to be getting up at those heights. Whereas where I live, central west New South Wales, you've got box gum woodland and you're looking at much shorter trees. So it's very different habitat, and it needs to be horses for courses.
Have you? I mean, obviously, where you're located is probably going to be your main customer or client base, because you're out seeing people and you can visit them and check out what the sites are and whatnot. But have you had inquiries from desert environments, from rainforest, overseas, and people?
We haven't shipped any boxes to Tassie or the Northern Territory yet. I think that's the only couple of states and territories we haven't hit yet.
And anybody overseas shown any interest? I mean, obviously,
our website tells us there is, but we haven't actually got any shipping set up at the moment to send stuff overseas. It's probably something we should look at, because our analytics do tell us that we're getting quite a bit of visitation from Europe and the States.
Yeah, I don't imagine for a second that the dearth of available nesting opportunities or shelter opportunities for mammals is an Australian problem only.
No, it's certainly not. And the loss of tree hollows, it truly is a global problem.
Do you know if there's been much work on the thermoregulation aspect of artificial hollows done in other places around the world, or were you just this weird guy who wanted to do it?
Oh no, there was a full literature review there, and there's certainly been a lot of work done on it. And I don't think the chainsaw hollows, carved hollows, very, very good there in terms of their thermal stability. But yeah, I've never seen any results from manufactured nest boxes that are even close to what we've been able to achieve.
We'll get to carved hollows in a while. I was wondering if you thought the reason that there isn't a Habitat nest box or artificial hollow being developed in Europe or in America, for instance, is because nobody else was willing to take the risk.
I expect so. I mean, when you were talking about the cost of that dye earlier, it's been a huge investment and a big risk.
Let's talk about that because, I mean, people can go back and hear the first part of the story, but it was a real significant personal risk for yourself, wasn't it? If it didn't happen, post pandemic, you could be living in your car, couldn't you?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, people ask me how much I've invested, and all I tell them is I used to be a homeowner, which would give you some kind of indication, I think.
Yeah. No. So I don't want you to go searching for your Superman T-shirt or anything, but you only make significant advances, even though there's a big need there. If someone's prepared to put their ass on the line, and you did it, so good on you.
Yeah. And look, I don't take that as really a pat on the back, but more just to the point that I'd kind of been pushing into this field more and more, and knew that if we could crack it, that there's a good market out there. But to get it right, I think I was never confident that we could, honestly. And when I first sort of started into this with the 3D printing, I thought, yes, this will be great. 3D printers are taking off and be able to create these files and everyone can download 3D printed boxes in their house and put them up. The technology's not there, certainly not on the
it's stalled,
home printer
hasn't it?
scale.
Yeah.
And
the 3D printing revolution seems to have happened for handguns.
Yeah.
but not much else.
There is the exception with the team at Melbourne Uni that have been doing that amazing sort of block structure for the powerful owls. But in terms of just a home printer, it's not feasible. So that image you had up before of the Eastern Rosella at that pretty crude looking box, they were put up 3 or 4 years ago as one of our early prototypes and have subsequently all been taken down because even though they're painted and everything, the plastic used in that 3D printing process just isn't durable enough, and we wanted to make sure they came down before they started really degrading
and giving you a bad name.
Yeah.
The other thing about your journey, you're not allowed to say your journey should be outlawed. It just should not be allowed to be said. The development path that you took, Mick, was an extension of study that you were doing. But tell us how long that time frame has been, and the thing I can't remember if I asked you this before, but did the interest in the nest boxes and the problem, the thermoregulation problem and the longevity problem, did that drive the choice of the research? Or,
yes.
Okay, so
yeah, very much. So my background's been across a few different industries before I really was able to get back into the environmental field, but I've been doing it for a lot of years now, and background in private industry and local government and state government. And when you live out in this part of the world where organisations are typically smaller, it makes it harder to specialise. So when you're working in the environmental field, it's pretty broad, but I found I just kept narrowing back in on birds, and particularly sort of hollow dependent species, and was doing chainsaw hollow work and nest box programs, and was really understanding the shortcomings.
So just to set the scene for people who haven't met you before, when you were working that was working for the state government, wasn't it? In
Prior to the
parks.
yes,
Yeah.
yep.
So you had to be able to produce a brochure, lead a tour, fix a fence, and clean the toilets. Yeah.
Oh no, what? Sorry, no, I wasn't working for Parks. Different agency.
Similar skill set.
Yeah, but working, you'd be working on waterways projects and re-veg projects and then threatened species projects, and you kind of expected to be across a lot of things, which is always good. It keeps it interesting, but makes it very hard to specialise.
So did the uh, I'm sorry if I'm treading old ground for people who have recently listened uh, to the first podcast episode that we did, Mick. But did the decision to enrol at Charles Sturt and become an ornithologist, because that was the course that you did, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Was that decision driven by you may be able to have an opportunity to do this research and solve this problem, or were you going to do the formal qualification in ornithology anyway?
yeah. No, I was doing the ornithology out of interest as much as anything, and professional and personal interest, I guess. But yeah, it was really wanting to do this research. So I'd started tinkering around with all the PVC pipe and timber stuff before I even had begun that honours research.
What's the most surprising species, be it mammal or bird or insects or whatever, that have made use of one of the boxes that's out there in the wild?
Uh, we haven't had, we didn't have the greater glider go in there, but I mean, that was fantastic to see greater glider checking one out. I think the very best, like the best moment for me was that early picture with those fully 3D printed boxes where we had rosellas checking them out. It looks fantastic, that photo. They actually couldn't fit in there. They were a bit too big. But we designed those for red rump parrots, and we had red rumps in them the first season. And that was really a catalyst for me, because I thought, yeah, we can do this. I think still today that's been the most exciting one, because so many people said this is a terrible idea. Plastic is no good. It'll be too hot. It will give off VOCs. It'll do this. It'll do that. And to have that success was second in the journey, I think, to knowing that we nailed those thermal properties. That was a real kind of eureka moment for us.
Okay, let's talk about VOCs, because I actually did get a private message from someone. Oh, it's years ago now, isn't it, Mick? I mean,
Yeah.
Did we do our first chat pre-pandemic? Didn't we? I think so.
I think it was. Yeah.
I think it was early 2019. But must have been early in the pandemic. I got a message from someone saying you shouldn't be promoting plastic because of gives off noxious compounds and animals and birds will die. And I did a quick online search, and I just thought, I'm not even going to reply to that. I'm not even going to waste 10 minutes or at the risk of having a further discussion with someone who hadn't really looked at where we were at nowadays. But
who'd probably just warmed up their lunch in the microwave in some Tupperware.
That's right. I mean, I was probably at more risk when I was working in the 90s making plastic rulers in a factory, right? Than any bird or any possum that decides to go into one of your boxes. But
definitely, and it's actually maybe counterintuitive for a lot of people, because we often get asked why we don't use marine ply as the inserts in the boxes.
Do they know what's in marine ply?
Marine ply gives off VOCs for about 18 months. So if you make a nest box out of marine ply, it would be surprising if you've got anything using it in the first 12 months, because they're actually pretty hazardous to anything that might be going in there. I think that sort of comes back to a bit of a myth that there used to be with nest boxes, that it takes about 12 months for animals to find them. I think the truth of that is that a lot of those boxes were created or built from marine ply and were actually quite toxic for that 12 months, so nothing was using them.
And probably not only marine ply, I was certainly guilty of it, just because I didn't put my mind to it. When I had offcuts of treated pine, CCA, whacked together some jerry-built nest boxes that were pretty popular with the birds, but it didn't even enter my mind when I did that, and we're talking 20 years ago, nearly. It didn't even enter my mind that birds chewing them and whatnot, because it just was not something that we talked about and we thought about. And I was using my horticulture head, about, and we don't want to waste anything. That was also the thing. I've got all this timber lying around that I don't want to waste. What can I do with it?
Yeah.
But what I wanted to really find out, to put that argument to bed, when you were developing the design and doing your reliability testing, your quality control, did you do measurements for VOCs?
No, we just went straight to manufacturers and
use their specs and materials.
We've got all the MSDSs and stuff, so yeah, we didn't need to do our own testing. We know the materials are pretty much inert. The other one that we used to get a lot of and still occasionally do is the birds chewing on them, and we've used glass reinforced polypropylene that's UV stabilized, and it is so hard. I would be surprised that anything can tear that apart. But that, again, those 3D boxes that you had the image of earlier, we had those paired in trees with timber boxes. And when we took those plastic boxes down, there's no chewing on them. They haven't been chewed at all, and that's really quite a soft plastic, whereas the timber boxes have been just absolutely torn apart at the openings. So I think there's something in that the birds, and there's a lot of the birds, like to chew on timber as part of a courtship process and a nesting process, or to try and open up entrances, but it just must be that mouthfeel or something about it, they don't like to chew the plastic. So
that's the picture on screen now is generation 1, and is this the are you still developing, Mick? Like, is this the final design, or
it is? It is for the Habitat modular system. We're currently working on the next iteration for the larger species, the owls and the black cockies and those sorts of really large hollow dependent fauna.
So there'll be a new model, and which would mean, does that mean a new dye?
We're looking at various options at the moment in terms of manufacturing, but in short, yes.
Yeah, so I mean, for people to understand, that's a massive investment to add one more model to the range that is not part of the modular system. So I'm sure you don't want to give away any equity, Mick. So that means people need to be buying Habitat boxes now. Buy them now for the.
Yeah, get in now.
Um, Again, we're sort of going over the the minutiae of the production process a bit here, but you need a significant lot of back orders or really confirmed interest before you would do another production run, wouldn't you? Because it's a lot of time.
Yeah, well, we've made the decision that we're keeping stock on hand at any time. The lowest we ever want to get in our warehouse is the capability to put together 500 boxes.
Okay, so that
just for the fact that we can turn these things around, and we don't the production time to go from an order to having the components produced is reasonably slow, even though the production process itself is quite fast. So we like to have a good volume of stock in the warehouse so that if we get an order tomorrow, if we get one today for 100 boxes, we can have that shipped on Friday.
Gee, that's good. That's good. And then you would move to having 40% out there in the field. That'd be good.
Yeah. Right, look, I wouldn't be surprised if 90% of those boxes are up and installed. It's just that it's only sort of that 20 to 30% that we've actually done the installations of and got 100% guarantee that they're up and in the trees.
Cool. Well, let's talk about some of the other opportunities and other methods. So we mentioned carved hollows. This is a hollow that you created. Now, did you do this one yourself, Mick?
Yeah, I did actually.
Okay, so this is a tree that has one of those horizontal leaning over boughs, and you've created a significant hollow. I'm thinking that there was already the cavity or not. Did you create the whole?
No, we often look for those because I think they create a better hollow when you're able to tap into a bit of rot inside. That particular one didn't have any, but it's a good example of, I'm not sure if people are familiar with the hollow hog tool, but a combination of a chainsaw hollow and using the hollow hog to clean that up and create the entrance. So
I'm hoping that I'll be able to speak with Mr. Hollow Hog. We've talked a little bit, but it's hard to get. It's just hard to get in contact with people who are out working in the field all the time, Mick, isn't it? But the Hollow Hog does this bit that we're showing. So it's for people who aren't familiar, it's kind of like a cross between a chisel and a router and a jackhammer, isn't it?
It's essentially a small, if you think of those mining drills that sort of drill tunnels, it's essentially a small version of that. Yeah. Has that round head. You can see those sort of round shapes in there where it's gouged out the timber, and you can use it, and we use it to create hollows without the chainsaw, but it's very much situation dependent. So sometimes that combination works well.
So the chamber there is what, 35 centimetres long, roughly, I guess?
Probably like right from the entrance a bit more. But the nesting chamber there would be thereabouts, I reckon.
And there you've got it's a very nice medium-sized parrot hollow. Do you know if you got any tenants in that one?
I don't know. We were contracted for that job, and I think there's some monitoring to come after the financial year when there's a bit more budget available and getting closer to spring.
Yeah. And of course, that's how everyone makes decisions in this in this country. We're all buying stuff we don't need this week to get a tax deduction for this year, and then we're waiting for our budget infusion for the next financial year in the next 2 weeks, and then we all go again. Where was I? I wanted to go back to mounting them. There's my picture of you in your office. That looks like one of the early iterations of the box. Is that right, Mick?
That was the very first one of those fully 3D printed boxes targeting red rumps.
Yeah, and that one's come down. Have you replaced that with one of the new boxes?
We have, yeah. Only quite recently, actually, but see the bracket design we were working on there. We didn't have it quite right at that point, but you can see kind of the thinking behind it a little, I guess.
Yeah. So, we haven't really talked about how it's not only the box. There's a modular bracket, but one thing that people have asked me a number of times, and I can't remember if we talked about it before, but here we go, Mick. In these new boxes, so let's have a look at the tree creeper one here, the white-throated tree creeper. If this was part of a research project for somebody looking at the nesting behaviours of the white-throated tree creeper, or insert relevant tree creeper here, have you got a lid now where you can mount a camera or something in it?
We haven't got anything incorporated at this stage, but yeah, it's something we're definitely looking at. We're doing a couple of different things in terms of the research space, but it's something we're very interested in at the moment. And there's some good options out there, but the thing we're finding difficult is powering them, so that a lot of these projects and a lot of where the boxes are going are quite remote, and will need, for those internal cameras, they need a power source, and how we work that's the question.
So you would need to either have a caddy for a battery of some sort, or you would need to be mounting solar panels on the boxes, which cockatoos might love them.
Yeah.
But the other issue too, and this is what I had discussed with a couple of people who said, "Oh, I really like this, but there really needs to be a camera." Well, then I said, "Which camera?" Because you've got to make one lid which a camera can slide into or push into or something, and you can't accommodate every camera on the market. That would mean you have to have a different mold for the lid for each one of the lids. Now, are the lids injection molded as well?
They are.
Yeah,
they are.
Yeah. So, did you ever think about roto molding?
Yes, the level of detail we wanted on that, it just doesn't
lend itself to
roto molding.
Yeah. For those of us or for those wondering what the difference is, big plastic tanks are roto molded. Plastic pipes are extrusion molded, and intricate little things and money boxes that you used to get from the bank, and key ring fobs and things like that are injection molded, and Habitat nest boxes.
Yes.
Injection molded. So the plastic rulers that you got at school were injection molded. So just to give an idea of some of the different processes. And so you can't get the finish and the banding and all that kind of stuff. You can't get the neck done if it's roto molded. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of detail in these that made it restrictive.
Did this tree creeper move in?
No, and it's actually a box we set up for owl at nightjars, that one, which is why it's got quite the big entrance. Tree creeper box. It may end up using it. You can't stop them if they want to, but it was 4 different days that it came back and was checking that out. So maybe it will, but yeah, it's certainly not the configuration we'd normally put up for a white-throated tree creeper.
Did the owl at nightjar use it?
Not that one, but it was using a different one, actually. Yeah.
One. So, and again, that's something else we need to put into people's minds. Birds are no different to people. You know, you don't just go to one open house on a Saturday morning and go to one auction. You know, people go and look at 30, 40, 50, 200 houses before they get their heart set on the one they want to live in, right? So birds are probably no different. They go, oh, no, this is a south-facing access. I'm not interested in that. You know.
Yeah, it's amazing how much visitation a single hollow or nest box will get. When I had cameras up on natural hollows everywhere, I think the record we had was within a week we had one that had 12 different species come and check it out.
Actually, let's talk about that, because you put a whole heap of camera traps out to monitor hollows when you were doing your research as part of this. Was it part of the development of the product, or was it part of the project that you undertook at CSU?
It was in a way both. So I was looking at doing a separate study on predation and whether there was any difference in predation rates on natural hollows versus chainsaw hollows. So I had a lot of cameras out on both, and in the end ran out of time a bit, but we sort of got to the point where with ethics and stuff it was getting a bit difficult, and we didn't want to be putting eggs and things in hollows and checking predation out of season. It became too difficult to do in season, and so we were simply going to assess the visitation rate of predators to both. But by the time it came to write up my thesis, those tens of millions of photos just never got processed.
Oh, no. Well, I can think of a website that might put some of them up for you. Always looking for interesting visuals, mate. Are there any issues that you still think need to be solved as part of the next step in the development, the next iteration of your boxes?
Look, I mean, as I said, we're looking at the moment at developing a new, larger product for those species we can't cater for at the moment. We're also looking into putting fireproof additive into these ones so that they can actually withstand a extreme bushfire event. So that's something that we're hoping to pursue at the moment. And that's a question we get a lot, but are they fireproof? What if there's a bushfire? It's like, well, we can't beat nature. If you get a bushfire, you'll often lose a lot of tree hollows, but maybe we can.
Yeah. I guess the issue with that is you probably, if you wanted to make them indestructible, completely indestructible, you would probably make them so costly that no one would ever use them. I mean,
that's the risk. And like we were talking about before, we're also going back and looking at what these additives actually are and whether they're, safe to use for wildlife structures and all that sort of stuff. So there's a bit of water to go under the bridge there. And it's it sort of becomes a point of finding out whether if we can make these things fireproof, is there any point to it if whatever's inside's just going to be cooked anyway?
And I would look at it another way too. I mean, if you've got a client, be a government or semi-government body or something that has ordered 300 of them, and I think last time we're talking a couple of $100 for a box. So it's a significant investment. Surely they're insured. That would be my thought, that the general policy of the department or whichever body, should probably put a couple of $100 towards an insurance upgrade that covers the value of this stock, because this is significant stock for whoever is using them. One, okay, you're not going to insure it, but you insure your $4,000 push bike that you do your triathlons in. I reckon you do. If you've got $300,000 worth of artificial hollows hanging in the tree, plus the man hours that it took to install them, you'd reckon you'd insure them.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's not something I'd considered before, and I'm not sure if it happens, but it is a very good point you make.
Well, Mick, that's just, let's just get this out. That should be an accounting hat that you've put on today as well. People really need to think about these kind of things. But it's the same reason why people will spend, I don't know, $30,000 putting a pool in their house in a fire zone, but they won't spend $5,000 on a sprinkler system that uses the water from their tank and their pool to preserve their house, right?
Yes.
So, people don't always make rational decisions. So
they do not.
They do. What can? How do I phrase this? How can we get more semi-government, local government, and allied bodies to be investing in the artificial hollows, be they the Habitat range of nest boxes or Hollow Hog or chainsaw created hollows, or just not tidying up dead trees? How far along have we come in making decision makers aware of the value of hollows and then preserving them? And you probably know where I'm going. And
yeah.
not leaning on these bloody offsets, because offsets.
Yeah, I think we've come a long way. I think we've got a way to go. One of the things that I think's great is when you start seeing reserve management plans put in place and people identifying that there's a lack of hollows there and then putting in some management strategies for that. I think the biggest thing with any artificial hollows is the fact that people need to really understand that point I was making at the start, that putting up one nest box or one carved hollow isn't going to solve a problem. That if you're putting in management plans at local government, state government, whatever it is, there should always be some budget to follow up and replace those boxes. And it should be an ongoing thing until you do an audit of that bushland and say, okay, we've got an appropriate number of hollows here to support the species that should be here.
I'm sure you've cast your mind to this question. I hope you have, because otherwise it's extremely unfair for me to lob it. How many hollows do you think we are short of what is required across the Australian landscape?
Now, that is a huge question.
But you've thought about it, haven't you?
No, we've done some work where we go to an area and you look at the PCB, like the veg community there, and you can get a baseline
Yep.
figure of how many hollows should be per hectare in that sort of vegetation community. And where we've done that work, it normally falls at around 20 to 30% or less of what would be in a healthy remnant stand of that veg community. Okay. So in most areas of existing bushland, the number of hollows that should be there, in my experience at least, is around, say, 25% of what you'd get in an old growth forest. And that doesn't take into account the area, the enormous extent of area that's being cleared across Australia. So you would be looking at a seriously big number.
Are we talking tens of millions?
I would expect so, yeah. Yeah. Across Australia as a whole, for sure.
Gee, how many billionaires have we got in Australia?
Oof.
They wouldn't need to chip in much to make a significant difference, would they? You know?
Yeah, no, they wouldn't. But then again, with the scale of land clearing we've seen in this country, where do you put them? That's as much an issue as the lack of hollows itself.
I was obviously being facetious, but you've dedicated a significant portion of your life to solving a problem that we could minimise by just not destroying what we already have. But put your ecologist hat on for a minute. Oh, look, it's a blue ecologist hat you're wearing. I don't know. I don't know how to sort of ask this without being a rude bastard, but are offsets ever the answer?
That's a complicated question. I don't really do offset work. I choose not to because I think that it's a bread and butter work for a lot of ecologists. But for me and our crew, we just find that the idea of going through and assessing bushland for the flora and fauna that's there, only to know it's being tipped over, is pretty heartbreaking. To do that day in and day out would be demoralising over time. So do offsets work? I'm not an expert in that field, but my understanding is that the concept of offsets came from a good place. I think the way they've been, I wasn't going to, massaged wasn't the word I was going to use, but I've bite my tongue a little. To become something suitable for governments to allow land clearing has completely changed the original intention of what offsets should be.
Yeah, can I perhaps phrase it differently, because I can maybe get away with it? And look, leave a comment somewhere and on the webpage or on the Facebook or whatever if you disagree with this. But offsets seem to me, be they in a monetary value to be able to buy your boxes and hang them, or to make the shittiest bit of land in a development supposedly an ecological piece of public space. Offsets are just a really, really shitty way of making really, really shitty developments possible. And they're a way for people to say yes to things that probably shouldn't be given approval. Kill me, take it up with me in the comments if if you want to disagree, people. But we're sort of at the stage where we can't be playing by the same rules that we played with 20 years ago, because what we did 20 years ago has left us at this stage here where we're hundreds of millions of hollows short across the country, and people are really saying we might have no koalas anywhere in Australia except Victoria, you know, and even then we might not hang on to them. We're only one strain of chlamydia away from losing them. You know, it's
Yeah,
yours,
look, I mean,
yours is a good news story, Mick. I couldn't resist bringing it down.
on a small scale, our nest boxes, as proud as we are of them and as happy as we are with their performance, they're not a tree hollow. So it's not like for like. And on a larger scale, the thing that gets me with the offsets is that if I want to clear a big patch of bush here and I pay someone money to protect a patch of bush over there, that's not no net loss. That patch of bush was already there. And just because it's got a new fence around it or something, you haven't protected anything. What have you offset?
Or the other thing, which I look, I almost dread suggesting it, because next I'll see it, is that, all right, let's say, I don't know, that offsetting for a particular development, they buy 10 of your boxes, right? And let's say it's $250 a go. All right. Well, what they might say is, I'll tell you what, we'll make it, we'll triple the amount, because what we're going to do, we're going to provide the poles to hang the boxes on, right? So you're getting double the value of the offset, but also you're getting like a 5 times shittier option, you know.
Yeah,
and it's just crazy the way that we're looking at it. You know, when we think about so many species that we haven't even talked about, you know, I threw in superb parrots earlier on, you know.
Mm-hmm. It's a big one for us. We've got some work coming up where we're hoping to get some boxes up and really target them, because it's never been successful before, and we think what we've put together for superbs is going to fit the bill. So we're pretty excited about that one. We'll hopefully have some good news come spring.
Well, at the risk of getting egg on my face and throwing in a name that doesn't need to be used, but have you been collaborating at all with Mac on his research with the superb parrots?
Yeah, a little bit so far. We've touched base there, and also with Laura Rayner, who's formerly ANU and now working for the Canberra government, I believe.
Yeah, no, that was the project that I was referencing. So, Matt Cobden, if you're watching and you want to check out, have a look at what Mac's been doing, and I think he's probably published by now. I think he, I hope so. I hope I haven't put the pressure on you, Mac. But yeah, that's a project that I want to follow up, and obviously Laura's done some. You know, her name is well known for having done piles of good work. So it's a small community, isn't it? And you all work together. You all support each other's work and make sure that every new bit of information gets well used. And that's the way.
No, it really is. It's a great industry to work in. Really, people are very generous and open with their time and their knowledge, which is wonderful.
Mick, just tell us briefly before we wrap up. I've got the website for your business there, habitatinnovation.com.au. What kind of consulting work do you do apart from producing the hollows and getting out there with the chainsaws and looking like an arboricultural worker? I'm sure a lot of people ask you, can you trim their trees?
I get that a lot. A lot of people ask if I'm an arborist, which no, I'm not. I'm a tree climber, and I'm actually a tree faller as well, which surprises quite a few people, but I'm not an arborist. We do a lot of waterways stuff, monitoring and urban, particularly in the urban space around the mountains in Western Sydney. But also we do more general stuff. We like to do habitat restoration works and plans for that, and assessments, field assessments, database assessments. We do a lot of that sort of background work to then get out on site, have a look around, see what's there. And one of the things we really enjoy doing is what we call the habitat needs assessment, where we can come into whether it's someone's property or something much more large scale and saying, look, here's the species you have and here's what's missing, and this is how you can change things to really bring back those species that have dropped out or that are in lower numbers than they probably should be ideally.
Who else is on the team?
We've got Carl Tipler's the other director. He's based in Wagga Wagga, up in Sydney today. Then we've got a team of young ecologists across the mountains who are just fantastic to work with. We've got some staff here in Bathurst with me who do installations and in the warehouse, and some admin support down in Wagga and Melbourne, and Alex, who's our engineer, also Bathurst based. So it's sort of growing pretty quickly and pretty diverse team, but we all enjoy each other's company, and it's going very well at the moment, which is lovely.
So we spoke in 2019, early 2019, and the team consisted of you then. So how many full-time equivalents have you got in the team now?
Probably 6 or 7, I guess.
Well, that's pretty good. That's a success story, no matter which way you turn it around. And you haven't got significantly greyer, judging by the beard there. So that's a positive thing too. Yeah,
not much scope.
Right. That's right. We can't escape that when we're gentlemen of a certain age. So you're fielding. You're happy still to be fielding inquiries. You're not.
Oh, absolutely, always. We've had a very busy run into the end of financial year. A lot of agencies looking to get rid of money and not necessarily knowing what they want to spend it on. So fair bit of work in proposals for those ones. But yeah, anyone that reaches out, we normally are pretty good at getting back to them and fielding any questions, helping out where we can.
Fantastic. Well, I'm going to put my ad up. There we go. thebirdemergency.com. Every day I'm doing a little bit more work on the website so that it's a bit more than just here's a podcast episode to listen to. trying to fill that out. Does take a lot of time. I don't have any full-time equivalents working on the Bird Emergency mix. And my big ad for people who might want to support the show at the moment, I need to get a couple of hundred more subscribers on the YouTube channel so that I can get access to a few more features and make the YouTube channel a bit more usable, and then possibly do some new things. Have you done any merch yet, Mick? Have you got a Habitat T-shirt, or is that a Habitat?
No, we haven't got that far yet. We've got some hats and beanies and shirts for staff, but we haven't gone down the line of merch yet. Oh, other than we did sponsor the Conservation in Action conference in Orange a month or so ago, and there was some stubby holders along with that.
Yeah, I meant to ask you about that. I wanted to be able to go to that, but I couldn't. So I didn't. Funnily enough. How did the conference go? What were the highlights?
Well, there were a few. the speakers, we had some amazing speakers there. So David Lindenmeyer from ANU was always fantastic, and Kate McBride, who a lot of people would have seen on Q&A and different shows, advocating for waterways, and particularly the Darling Barker, very good speaker. There were some good workshops. We had Sammy Bailey. If anyone's got kids that are interested in animals, check out Sammy Bailey, because she's an author and illustrator, but she ran a scientific illustration workshop for us that was really well received, and a great cultural immersion experience as well up on in Orange, so with the local Aboriginal Lands Council. So that was really popular as well.
I'm guessing most of those sessions are available online somewhere, Mick?
No, none of it was filmed.
You got, yeah, someone should have sent me there. I could have done that for you.
Yeah.
I'll just put that out there. If you're doing an environment/biology/conservation event and you do want it filmed and turned into broadcasts and whatnot, I'll do that. So there we are. The Bird Emergency.
Keep that one up the sleeve.
Well, I mean, it's one of my great frustrations, Mick, is that I'm doing this on the smell of an oily rag. I mean, it costs me more money than most people spend in petrol every year to do this, and I do it because I think it's important. But there's bodies out there paying people 150 grand a year to talk about what they should do in communications, but they're not producing as much content each week as I do. Now, that's assuming my content is valuable. That's not a decision for me to make. But God, there's a lot of money sloshing around that isn't doing stuff. You know, there's a lot of money out there, obviously refurbishing offices or buying vehicles or something, which
rebranding organisations.
Yeah, a whole lot of stuff, man. And I don't want to sound like I'm having a dig at everyone. I'm not. That's the way things are done. But sometimes you need to sort of stand outside and, hey, let's go, well, if we've got $100,000 to spend, maybe we could empty Mick's warehouse, you know. Maybe we could buy all of his boxes and hang them up somewhere, you know. Or maybe we could buy that critical piece of habitat that some bloke wants to build a shopping centre on, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe we could do that. Anyway, Mick, great talking to you again. I've really enjoyed it. This is my first Monday without Holly, so I'm a bit. I was a bit scared. I was a bit scared whether I'd be able to do it without Holly. I will just give a plug to the 25th of July. We will be doing the State of the Environment Report response, because the State of the Environment Report, which the previous government sat on for God knows how long, is being released on the 19th of July, and we'll find out how the threatened and endangered species of Australia are really going. Thank you for the Facebook love, Naomi Burgesson or Bergeson. I hope I'm guessing it's Burgesson. Janice Hipperson, thank you for the Facebook like, and Costa Giordiades official. You know you're a big deal when you have to put official in your social media handle. So good on you. Maybe Gardening Australia will have to do a session with you, Mick. And Burrendong Arboretum sounds like a good location for Gardening Australia to meet Mick Callen and talk about habitat nest boxes.
Oh, well, it turns out Gardening Australia have already done it.
Oh, did I miss it? When?
It was a little while back. I think it was a little bit of the ABC budget cuts coming through there, because it was pretty much a repeat of the It's not, what am I saying, landline story.
Oh, so I saw the landline story. So I missed you on Gardening Australia.
Apparently so.
Oh, gee, my goodness. I deliberately didn't watch Gardening Australia this week because Ida Buttrose was on it. So that's a whole nother story. Mick, let's just get that up again. habitatinnovation.com.au. What's the best socials for people to check you out?
Oh, gee, that's a good question. I should know that. They vary a bit, but if you put Habitat Innovation into any of them, you'll find us there.
Send them to me, Mick, and it'll be on the birdemergency.com/Mick. Thebirdemergency.com/Mick. I'll produce that later in the day and put all the links there, and obviously the link to the replay of our conversation.
They are all in the email footer, by the way, so you'll be able to track them down there.
Fabulous.
Wonderful.
Just wanted to make sure that we only put the ones out there that you want to put out there, so that's good. Great to talk to you again, Mick. Fantastic to see how well it's going. And 6 jobs plus you've managed to create 6 full-time jobs. So it's probably more. It's more people involved. That's a real good news story, no matter which way you cut it. And someone should be coming and giving you a development grant and encouraging you to fill up more warehouses full of nest boxes towards the several hundred million that we need across this country and the rest of the world.
I'm open to that.
Good stuff. Mick Callen, thank you. I'm Grant Williams. This has been the Bird Emergency, Monday with Grant. See you, everyone.